Greetings. My name's Guy Dauncey, and this is the show Change the World, where, as you'll know if you've seen before, we're looking for big, bold solutions to some of the many crises that make us feel overwhelmed and crazy about the world. And for the next few weeks, I am offering a space to interview as many of the candidates for the provincial election in the Mid-Island area as feel good to respond. And today we have Glenn Sollitt, who's running for the Green Party in Parksville, Qualicum.
That's correct, yes.
And just a bit of a background, Glenn has been living in the Neuse Bay, Qualicum Beach area for 20 years now.
Yes.
You're a father, you've got 3 kids, you trained as a mechanical engineer, you run a shellfish aquaculture industry, you worked in that, and now you run a seafood distribution company as well. And you grew up as a commercial fisherman, deckhanding for your father, building your own boat, which makes me feel completely in awe of that kind of thing. And I'm going to ask you first, why do you want to represent the people in your riding?
That's an excellent question. I think that I have an awful lot invested in the island, as you've mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got 3 generations living on the island, and it's a place that I hold very, very dear. I was lucky enough to grow up in a wonderful time. The 70s and 80s were a wonderful time. I grew up on Salt Spring Island, so between Salt Spring and Vancouver Island. I've been lucky enough to really enjoy a wonderful place.
You enjoyed all the hippie years then, probably? Well, actually, 20 years it's a bit more recent than that.
There was hippies on Salt Spring.
There always will be.
There always will be, yes, yeah. So yeah, we were actually, Salt Spring was way ahead of the game when it came to sustainability.
Yes.
I mean, we were recycling long before I think most people had even heard the term.
Right.
So yeah, Salt Spring I think is probably where I got my roots when it comes to things like we didn't call it a carbon footprint at the time, but we knew not to create a lot of garbage. We knew not to have a big impact on the island.
But being an MLA in a full, that's a big responsibility. You're representing, 40,000, 30,000 people or something like that?
Yeah,
55,000 people. So what's the fundamental motivation that makes you want to do that?
Well, 55,000 is a daunting number, but really what prompted me to get involved were 3 or 4 people, and that's my family. I've got 3 kids. They're in their 20s. In a few years, probably, luckily, I'll be a grandparent. And I'm 52 years old, so I'm at the age when I'm starting to think about things like that.
Just a youngster.
Yeah, I'm aging fast in this process. But yeah, I think I'm at a good stage of my life. I'm young enough to still have an awful lot of energy to put into this, and I have reasons to do that. I've got my own family and the rest of the province. I feel it's really important for us to make some significant changes in the way we're affecting the place we live.
Right.
And I want to be involved in leading us in the right direction.
I've got a number of issues here, and it's actually the same list of issues I'm going to throw to every candidate, so it's a fully square thing. And at the end of this, I'll offer you 3 minutes to speak straight to camera and make your pitch right.
Sure.
So the first issue is like poverty. Just as background for viewers, BC has the highest poverty rate in the country. 13%, or 1 in 8 people live in poverty. Our child poverty rate is 1 in 5. Half of all single mothers live in poverty. And the food banks last year were 32% higher people using the food banks than before the 2008 crash. So what do you think needs to be done about poverty in British Columbia?
Well, the very first thing is awareness. I'll bet that a lot of viewers are going to be shocked by those numbers that you just said. We live in a very obviously affluent area. I live in Qualicum Beach. It's a very affluent community, yet poverty and homelessness are big issues. They're very big issues locally. So we have to do something about that. There's vast income disparity in BC, and the bold approach that the Green Party has is to embrace the notion of minimum allowable income for all individuals. It's been tried several times around the world successfully.
Is that the same as basic income?
Yes, yes. Yeah, under a couple of different names. Yeah. It's something that, in all honesty, the first time I heard of it, I went, oh, that'll never work. That sounds expensive, and that sounds like we would be, prompting freeloaders. It just didn't have the right flavor to me. But an awful lot of research has gone into it. Trials have gone on, and it works. Yeah. And strangely enough, it's cheaper. It's actually cheaper than our current method of providing allowances and subsidies and handouts to those in need.
So if someone, do you have any idea how much the basic income would be? Is it per
No,
month or per year?
It's per year, broken down monthly. So you really have to look at it geographically, because the minimum amount it takes to live in Vancouver is certainly a lot more than Prince George or anywhere else on the planet. So it does need to be regionalized. One needs to determine what that number is, and then there's a couple of different approaches. But basically, to throw out some numbers, let's assume it was $20,000. Then every citizen receives $20,000 divided by 12. That's your monthly check. If you are affluent enough to not need it, it would be clawed back in taxes.
That's like $1,700, $1,800 a month.
Yes. Yeah. And so remarkably more than people that are on welfare and
unlike unemployment benefits, people could then free to earn extra money on top of that, obviously.
Yes, and then so it would be taxed back. So let's say, we'd suggest something like no income tax below, say, $20,000. So if you were on basic income, you would receive that and probably keep all of it. If you were working, the higher your income, the more it would all get clawed back in taxes.
So for someone who's on a disability allowance, currently getting $900 a month?
Yes.
That's a big lift out of poverty for the core people.
Absolutely, double. Well, I mean, to that point, it's strange to me. So we have a poverty level that's in the neighborhood of about $20,000, depending on where we look, $20,000, $21,000. Yet you just mentioned the person on disability who receives $10,000, a little under $10,000 a year. So we are putting them well below the poverty line. It doesn't make sense to me how that's supposed to work.
Do you think that, I mean, for a lot of viewers, this could be a whole topic, just basic income.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
The presence of people having that much wage, might that suppress wages in some industries? Because employers will say, well, we don't need to pay so much because they've got the basic income.
Some of the fears in a system like this just don't bear true when it's been trialed. We trialed it in Canada, in Manitoba. There was a city in the 70s that they did a several-year trial, and it worked very effectively. There's European countries that are now looking to implement it countrywide. Right. What we're suggesting is, it's a big province, it's a big step. We would like to look at a couple of communities.
Yeah, do a trial.
Sure, pick a community that's in the maybe 30,000 people range and do it for a year and see. Yeah. It would replace all other forms of support. So one of the reasons that it can work is it's a way cheaper model to deliver.
Okay. Well, there's a lot more details, but I want to jump on affordable housing, which is tied to this, and homelessness. I mean, to me, like in a wealthy province, it's just wrong that there are people struggling, millennials struggling to buy a house, people paying outrageously high rent, people living couch surfing, people in their 40s living on their parents' basements, and people living on the streets and in tents. What's the solution to the affordable housing crisis and homelessness from the Green Party's perspective?
Well, it's not far off our earlier conversation. I mean, it does take a certain amount of income to be able to afford housing. Yeah. So income or minimum income is critical. Beyond that, it's about supply and demand. Right now, the demand is high and the supply is too low. Yeah. We have to figure out a way to incentivize affordable rent housing. And
has the Green Party figured that way out? What is the actual method they might choose?
Well, certainly ideas to propose. Yes, it really gets down to the municipal level when it comes to the actual delivery. So we need to determine how to help municipalities allow more affordable housing and to not just allow but promote and encourage. We have to increase the supply. When we do, it works. Yeah. So Nanaimo has had some breakthroughs. Yeah. Where I live, Parksville, Qualicum, not so much.
In the recent federal and provincial housing announcements, Nanaimo gets a slice of 140 new units of affordable housing, and they got 4,000 people on the waiting list. So nowhere near enough.
No. Again, supply and demand. It's as simple as that.
And in Medicine Hat, Alberta, they've taken an approach to homelessness called Housing First, and they actually eliminated all homelessness. Is that something the Green Party is looking to do as well?
Well, absolutely. Conceptually, yes. That's what would solve the problem. It's clearly difficult. I think Mayor Robertson had that same goal in Vancouver to eliminate homelessness, and it's obviously proving to be...
Hasn't happened yet, no.
No, it hasn't happened. It's extremely challenging.
Okay.
So
BC's First Nations, they're suffering higher levels of poverty, atrocious housing conditions, healthcare challenges, educational challenges. What's needed so that our First Nations cousins and brothers and sisters can live with the same level of respect and dignity that we all want to live with?
Yeah, okay. Tough question.
Yeah.
If that was an easy one, we would have had progress sometime in the last several decades, which we haven't.
Yes, but we need to progress.
We need to do something. So an idea would be to, right now, on the First Nations, it's not possible for a family to own their home, freehold. So they cannot take a mortgage out on their home like you and I can. I think that is a huge barrier. I think that we need to have First Nations be enabled to own their property and their home outright, be able to take a chattel mortgage out against it. I think
so. The First Nations' response to that from some people would be that if people are feeling stretched and challenged financially, they can sell their lot in the free market and take the money and just disappear and no longer be part of the tribal group, the band. So it could disrupt First Nations culture.
Again, didn't say it was easy.
It's not easy, no.
No. I think that we want to encourage or facilitate all First Nations families that want to stay on reserve to do just that. So we have to make it more desirable for them to stay. But I mean, it's going to obviously be an individual's choice. But I think the home ownership is a big first step.
Yeah. Okay, climate crisis.
Yeah.
We're heading for 3 or 4 degrees warmer temperature on the planet with the current way of doing things. And the last time the world was 3 degrees warmer, sea level was 25 meters higher.
Yes.
And this previous Christmas, up in the Arctic, the temperature was 30 degrees Celsius warmer than normal. What's the Green Party approach to tackling this crisis?
Well, we obviously have to move faster than most countries are moving, certainly faster than Canada has been moving. There's a lot of conversation and agreement that climate change is occurring. I think that there's no argument. However, it's not making it into policy. So politicians and candidates talk about it, a lot of people talk about it, but there are no actions. It doesn't seem to affect the policies that we're making.
And it doesn't seem to affect people in the households. I hear people saying, look, we know it's important, but no one seems to be doing anything.
No. Well, I think that I think that the government can play a role with that. I think what has to happen is, if I look at within my own family, within my children, they're on board. They understand that there is a problem. I understand that there's a problem.
Yes.
But then what does one do about it? And I think that the solutions need to make it to the consumer level. So that means, I mean, I drove here tonight in my car. It's diesel powered, but we have a gas powered car, and someone would say, oh, well, it's hypocritical, Green Party, you should be riding a horse. Well, no, we need viable solutions at the consumer level. I would have an electric car if I could afford one. But when it comes to where as individuals, where we really have power is as consumers, way more so than as a voting public. We get to vote every 4 years. That's when we get to have our say. But we spend money every day. That's when we can affect change.
Is it fair to put it onto the consumer? That what government programs can help us to make the right decisions?
It's not. I'm not saying that. I think it is fair to put it on consumers to a certain extent. I do think that we need to. It's difficult, but we have to somehow educate ourselves to make the best choices possible. So when you're walking down the aisles of the grocery store, there are items that you can buy that have less impact on climate change than others, and it's incumbent on us to learn as best we can. But as far as the government goes, the government has a huge role in helping bring these products to market. A very obvious one is transportation. So if we still are stumbling over ourselves to facilitate fossil fuel industry, we're going down the wrong path.
So Christy Clark is saying that by investing in liquid natural gas, it actually reduces global greenhouse gas emissions. Do you buy that or not?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's a ridiculous statement. If we're serious about about making improvements, we have to act now. And it's nonsensical to me to say that we need to basically start and create a flourishing fossil fuel industry in order to take ourselves off fossil fuel.
And what about the new pipeline to Burnaby? Where do you stand on that one?
Oh, absolutely against it.
Okay.
That for any number of reasons. I think the expansion of Kinder Morgan, there are half a dozen show-stopping reasons why that shouldn't occur. And I think that those are arguments that are quite easily made to a reasonable person. Yeah. So some of our effort needs to, and if I'm elected, some of my effort will go into ensuring that that project doesn't occur. But instead, what should we do? And that's what we have to be talking about, is not spending all of our time fighting and saying no to a project like that.
Next
what
theme
would we do?
Is the new economy. Does BC need to grow its economy in different ways?
Yes.
How would the Green Party do that?
Well, I think that we need to ensure that as we address the economy, we have to make sure that all the bold moves that we make, we're taking climate change into consideration, and we need to ensure that what we're doing is sustainable. And I think First Nations have a great approach that the decisions that we make now should not have an ill effect 7 generations down the road. At the beginning of our talk, I was only worried about 2 generations. Yeah. But to look that far down the road, we need to make sure that we're not destroying the earth that we're living on. So if I'm saying we shouldn't be bringing diluted bitumen in, we shouldn't be exporting thermal coal, we shouldn't be doing LNG.
And people are saying, well, what about jobs?
There's an awful lot more jobs in clean tech and clean energy than there is in fossil fuel.
Okay, even if
considerably more jobs.
In BC, we don't need to change our electricity supply. Solar's fun, but actually our electricity is already zero carbon effectively. So are there still jobs in transportation and retrofitting our buildings and transit and stuff like that?
Yes, but I would also say that there's still jobs in electricity. I mean, I think that we need to take a serious look at Site C and the entire approach that we've had. Right. I consider a dam to be to not have a negative carbon footprint. Yeah. But I'm learning that that's not the case. So we can't even rely on that. But we do have a lot of dams in place. So our approach has been hydroelectric dams, point source creation, and distribute that out to the masses. Right. Moving forward, I think we need to look at more distributed creation of electricity. So instead of having a point source and supplying it hundreds of kilometers away.
Like a big central thing.
Yeah. Right, so Site C and then great big power lines going off to the big users. No, so if we look specifically at Vancouver Island, Vancouver Island only produces about 25% of the electricity it uses. Okay. 75% comes from a big extension cord from the mainland. That's a unnerving thought.
Especially if there's an earthquake.
If there's an earthquake, we would be in big trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, there'd be brownouts, minimum brownouts, blackouts across the island, and no food. We should talk about food security too.
I'm going to in a minute.
Okay, so with electricity, I think we should be having small-scale distributed creation and more of a sharing economy. It's a great example of a sharing economy. Yeah. The price per kilowatt of renewable energy is plummeting. Yeah. We will all have solar panels on our roofs in the not too distant future.
So food and farming, question is, what will your party do to help young people take up farming?
Well, we have
to. They want to do it, and they're frustrated.
Yeah, I do know. I'm in the food distribution business, so I know some farms, and I know young farmers. It's extremely difficult for several reasons. Another complex problem, but certainly the cost of land is extremely expensive, and our ALR land that's set aside for farming, there's heavy-duty pressures on that, and we're seeing the strength of the ALR weakening, I think.
It's almost as if the sale price of ALR is as if you could get it rezoned for not farming in terms of the market price.
Yes, and really that has worked. We haven't needed to produce food locally. It's been because of the subsidized transportation and fossil fuel industry, we can buy an avocado for 90 cents from Mexico. Yes. I don't understand how that works. I don't know how an avocado can cost 90 cents. That makes no sense to me.
Makes no sense.
So it's a heavily subsidized industry that we have right now between the industrial farming and the associated transportation to get it here. That's worked. Obviously, it's worked. There's repercussions, but it's hard. It's hard to see those. Moving forward, again, back to climate change, will that continue to work? Can we count on getting our fruits and vegetables from Mexico or California?
Yeah.
I mean, California now, a big rainfall, so the reservoirs are full. A few months ago, that looked like a real dire situation.
And the snowpack is melting long term.
Right. So, I mean, that's one benefit that I think that we'll have.
Have you developed any tangible programs or ideas to help get more food?
Well, certainly, yes. So back to ALR,
Yes.
Address that to make sure that we don't have encroachment of arable land, to make sure that we can maintain that. I think that we also have to work on the marketing side and the consumption side. So back to the educated consumer, we need to make decisions to support our local industries. So that means that you and I should be buying locally produced fruits and vegetables. Now, but we need the government to help facilitate that. So what that means is let's stop subsidizing so much the importation of food, and instead let's subsidize, if required, the creation of food locally. Vancouver Island has an awful lot of arable land. We should be encouraging young farmers to get into the industry. They want to. Really, the biggest problem, the two biggest problems, is the cost of land ownership and distribution. So if we can, I mean, the government would be able to intervene, I think, on the cost of land or the facilitation of making land available. It's the big distributors that need to make some changes as well. I don't know how.
You mean the thrifty foods, the country grocers,
and the suppliers of those stores.
Right.
Yeah, food distribution is a very, very big business. It's one of those businesses where there's fewer and fewer, bigger and bigger players, and it's mass movement of cheap food that's come from a long distance.
So the local growers need to organize themselves collectively so that they have some weight in the market?
Yes, absolutely.
Become a big distributor cooperative or something like that?
Yeah, down the line, I think so, absolutely. And they should work with distributors that are encouraging the sourcing of local foods. But I mean, it may sound hokey, but farmers markets, farm gate sales, local production, again, that's incumbent on us to help make that happen. You and I should be buying from a farmer's market.
We were actually selling at the farmer's market in Cedar last year every week. Right.
So and the restaurants. Restaurants play a really big role in what consumers eat. If you look at something like sustainable seafood, the restaurants have embraced sustainable seafood. There's Vancouver Aquarium has a program called Oceanwise, and the restaurants have really embraced that. If you look at a menu, quite often you'll see the little logo. I think that same idea needs to happen with local fruits and vegetables.
Two quick questions before you have your 3 minutes. Election financing, do we change the rules or leave them the way they are?
We absolutely change them.
How do we change them?
I think I think we could easily just adopt the federal regulations.
Okay.
So for those that don't know, federally, change was made a few decades ago where there are no corporate and union donations. The only donations that a party can receive are from an individual, and is capped at $1,500. Right. So an individual
in a whole year?
In a whole year. Okay. So $1,500, I think it's gone up by about $20, but $1,500 to an individual riding and $1,500 to the national party. So you can be out of pocket a maximum $3,000. Okay. So, and that's at the federal level. So that's not much, really.
And does the Green Party accept corporate or union donations?
No, we don't. So provincially.
Yes, provincially. It's
provincially, no. So provincially, there are no rules. Any amount from any organization, from any country, there are no rules in the way the money can come in. That is wrong. That has to lead to nefarious relationships. So we would advocate to change that law immediately. Okay. That's a law that doesn't need to occur in order for us to make those changes. We don't need that law.
And a quick comment, the voting system, change it or leave it the way it is?
Change it.
To what?
The longer time goes, the more flexible I am in any approach to proportional representation. Okay. But 10% of the popular vote should relate to 10% of the available seats. How we get there, I'm open to options. Okay. There's a few that work, but we absolutely need to do that. I think therein lies one of the biggest problems that we have in our democracy.
So take a big breath, have a glass of water, gather your wits up. You now have 3 minutes straight to camera.
Okay.
So give your pitch to the voters of Parksville, Qualicum.
Okay. Well, we've been talking about sustainability in all of our conversations so far. So in that light, I think what we need to do is look towards our governments and ensure that our political landscape and our governments are sustainable. I would argue that our democracies right now, locally in the province, in Canada, certainly in the United States and abroad, our democracies are under stress. And when we have the lack of proportional representation, when we have a first-past-the-post system like we have, with only a couple of parties, effectively two parties, if we look at the States, if we look at BC, there's two parties. The longer we have entrenched two-party system, I feel the less those parties are responsible for their voters. The less they answer to the voters, and the more they answer to the corporations donating to them. I think what we need in BC is to have an alternative. I think we need to have a movement. We need to get elected MLAs that are putting their constituents first. And the will of the voter goes before their own personal gains and before their party's personal gains. I think the decisions have to be based on common sense, sustainability, collaboration. And I feel that in this election, the Green Party is absolutely the best way to get that infusion of common sense into the legislature. I'm hoping that the Green Party elects several MLAs. I really hope that I'm one of them, and I'm asking for your vote on May 9th. Thank you.
So that's great. So potentially, I mean, we're dreaming in Technicolor if the Greens win a majority,
Yeah.
But they could win enough to maybe form a coalition with either Liberals or the NDP?
Yes. So I ran federally, and that was my first encounter into politics. And it's an awful lot of time was spent pontificating as a group. How many seats are we trying? Do we want 2? Do we want 11? Do we want 15?
You ended up with 1.
We ended up with the one that we had. Yeah. And what a lot of people realize is it's kind of it's a futile effort to speculate. Yeah. Who knows? Andrew could lose his and we could end up with none. We could form government. It has happened. I mean, you don't have to look past Alberta they went from a couple of seats to forming government. It could happen. If we look at the States, if we look at Brexit, we know that things happen. And well, look, we could be in store for that here.
Congratulations for the work of running. I know how much effort it is to do that. It's a very heroic task. So this has been Change the World. My name is Guy Dauncey. We will be interviewing other candidates who are putting their efforts and their hearts and their work forward to sort of run for the May 9th elections. And so if you tune in this time next week, you'll get another candidate. And meanwhile, thanks for watching.